Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode. So, we are 1 week away from October. I love this time of year. It is, for me, the most wonderful time of the year. Yeah, not much of a fan of the cold and snow and, yeah, Christmas. But Halloween, it's always been my favorite. So, I thought I would start off the spooky season with a couple of paranormal encounters that I've had throughout my career as a paranormal investigator. So, the first one I'm going to talk about happened about 5 years ago down in a little place called Gallipolis, Ohio. Now, this happened to be the weekend that I went to the Mothman Festival, and I had received an invitation to stay at my friend's cabin, which was tucked away in the hills and hollows of Ohio, not far from the Ohio River and not far from Point Pleasant Place. Now, my friend had told us, myself and other people who were staying there that weekend, that he does get quite a bit of Bigfoot activity around his house. So I was excited to see that. And while we didn't get much Bigfoot activity, we did get activity of a different kind. So the first night I had stayed there, those of us who stayed in the upstairs, there were two of us to each little alcove of the cabin, with there being four, with the stairs coming up in the middle of the upstairs of the cabin. And in the alcove that I was in, it was myself and my little dog Tegan, and another author who was staying there that weekend. And then another alcove was a mother and daughter, adult mother and daughter. And then on the other side of me, directly across, was a gentleman staying by himself. And then there was a small area that was mostly storage area. So nobody was staying over in that area. So the first night that we were there, nothing happened. Everybody was just really tired from exploring Point Pleasant and, going to the documentaries that were played that night at the theater. So we all got a good night's rest. Everybody was up and early to go to the Mothman Festival the very next day. And it was a hot weekend that weekend. Now, this past Mothman that I just got back from was very mild. Temperatures in low 80s if they got hot at all. When I was there 5 years ago, we're talking 90 plus degrees. Very little shade, very little places to sit down. They've improved that greatly in downtown Point Pleasant along the street that all of the events are held on. But 5 years ago, 90 degrees, it was sweltering. So by the time we got back to my friend's cabin, everybody was exhausted. Everybody was thirsty. Everybody was hungry. So we all, had dinner, relaxed for a little bit. Everybody, went up to bed. And the author who had been staying in the same alcove as me, she decided that she was going to leave early and go home that day. So that meant that it was just me and my little dog Tegan in our alcove. So between the two twin-sized beds was, about 6 feet of room, if that. And in the middle of the two beds was a rocking chair. So I had just put my tote bag in the rocking chair, and I had a bottle of ibuprofen sitting in the top of the tote bag. And about 3 a.m. in the morning, I get this cold burning sensation going through me. That feeling you get that is right as you miss an accident or some type of, catastrophe, and that force that moves through you. I get this feeling going through me. It's around 3 a.m. in the morning. And just about that same time, my little dog Tegan, who is laying cuddled up to my chest, but she's between me and the wall. I have my back to the tote bag. She starts doing a very soft growl. Now, I have not moved at all. I am laying as still as possible because I have no idea what sent that sensation through me. And it's right about this time as I'm feeling that burning cold going through me, and Tegan's doing that very assertive, soft growl, telling me there's something going on, that I hear the bottle of ibuprofen being rattled back and forth. A very distinct sound. And I'd like to say, being a paranormal investigator, that I flipped right over and was like, haha, I've caught you, ghost. But that wasn't the case. It took about 10 minutes for me to get the willpower to slowly roll over and see if there was anything behind me, which there wasn't. It was very hard getting back to sleep for the rest of the night. Now, in the morning, as everybody else was getting up, I tried to play it off that I didn't think it was a ghost. So I called out to the mother and daughter who were in the next alcove, and I said, "Oh, are you guys okay? I heard you guys get up to get your medication in the middle of the night, and I didn't want to intrude, but just wondering if you guys were okay." And they said, "Oh, we're perfectly fine. But we didn't get up to get any medication, but we heard something rattling over in your area." And I said, "I was hoping it was over in your area, but you're right. It was over in my area. I think something was rattling the bottle of ibuprofen that I had in the top of the tote bag that's sitting here on this rocking chair." And this is when the daughter informs me, "Oh, well, this cabin's haunted by a little boy ghost, right? That's why there's antique toys up here for him to play with." Now, a friend of mine who's a podcaster stayed at the same cabin over the weekend. And let's just say he experienced quite a bit. Um, and I warned him, I did tell him that our friend's cabin was haunted. And he knew firsthand my story and encounter of what had happened there, but he apparently had his own encounters. So it'll be interesting when I go back on his podcast to find out what he experienced. Now, another interesting experience that I had all the way up in Michigan, the very tip of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, Mackinac City, not island, but city. There's a difference. Mackinac City is where you take the ferries over to Mackinac Island, and then you have to take the ferries back to either Mackinac Island or St. Ignace. So Mackinac City is small, but it's a very touristy town. The main strip of it is all souvenir shops and saltwater taffy and hot, Mackinac fudge and stuff like that. So I was on my way home from my Paracon. Now, I'll back up the story a little bit because my Paracon is in the end of August. And I had been there in mid-June because I was taking my mom and her dog back up to Minnesota. My mom had come home for her school reunion. I think it was the Golden Reunion or something like that. So I was driving her and her dog back up to Minnesota where she works most of the year, and I had my little dog with me. So it was hot in June, so we had the dogs out of the car, and I wanted to use the restroom, so I took my little dog with me into the public restroom and went into the big stall, and she sat on my lap, and we had no issues. Um, Left the bathroom, still no issues. Um, wasn't really anybody else, to interact with, so we were good. And got into the car, got on the road up to Minnesota. So fast forward to end of August, I'm coming back from my Paracon, which is Michigan Paracon, one of the biggest Paracons in the United States, and that's held in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. I decide I'm going to stop to grab dinner at this little restaurant in Mackinac City because you have to have a pasty. Pasties are like meat-filled turnovers. If you've never had one, I usually get the chicken with mashed potatoes and gravy. It's awesome. So they didn't have tables available when I got there. So they said about 30 minutes. I said, okay. So I go down to the public restroom, which is only maybe 30 feet away. And I go into the same exact stall. And as I'm finishing up and I'm about to leave the stall, my hand is literally on the latch for the stall door. And before I fully open the door, a voice as loud as I'm talking right now and as clear as day says, "What? No puppy this time?" Which made me pause and answer and say, "Oh, no, she's at home." And then I stop and I'm looking around. I'm looking to see if there's a security camera. There is none. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else in the bathrooms. There isn't. There's no speaker system. Something remembered that back in June, I had a little dog with me that I brought into the bathroom with me and remembered that I didn't have her, which was quite perplexing that something wants to have a conversation with you about your dog in a public restroom. So that one kind of threw me because, as far as I knew from my own research, the public bathrooms were not haunted. So I went and checked around outside the bathrooms. Still nobody was out there. There was not a soul in the bathrooms, in any of the stalls, or outside the bathroom. So I walked back over to the restaurant. By now they had a table available, had my dinner, got hot fudge and saltwater taffy for my friends and family, and went home. But this still stuck with me. So I'm good friends with Todd Clemmings, who does the ghost tours on Mackinac Island. And the next time I saw Todd, I told Todd the story. I said, "So who do you think that could have been?" He's like, "Well, it could have been the soldier from here or there. And, maybe that was them." And I said, "But they remembered." And he said, "Well, they're not all residual haunts. Some of them are intelligent haunts." So my question to you guys is, what kind of paranormal experiences have you had? What are your personal ghost stories? And until next week, stay curious out there and keep looking.